me 30 seconds and then I'll get started.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself, and if anyone has a question, just use the raised hand icon so Lisa can see you in case you haven't noticed what she typed in the chat box. And we'll get going. Lisa will unmute people as they need to be unmuted. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It is a delight to see you all back here again for my introduction to the Anastasi system of psychic development level 5. I'm recognizing a lot of the names on this list that have been with me right through my introductions to the first 4 levels. So we really are all progressing through this together, and that's a delight to see. And I also recognize some of you who are in my live class that's going on in Tampa right now, and that's very exciting to see too. So this is only an introduction. I do hope that everyone here at some point gets to either take my live classes or the classes on my Blu-rays, but I will go as deeply as I can into this weekend seminar in the hour to hour and a half that's available to us this evening. As I go through the material I'm going to cover this evening, I'm welcoming your questions. Trish already told this to you, but let me remind you that you see that little palm on your screen on the right-hand side, and if you want to have a question at any point, if you click the little box next to your name under that palm, then we will see it, and I'll be able to stop periodically through my presentation and take some questions, because I want to make this as personal for you as I possibly can. Your questions are always good, because always remember, a question that you have is going to be the same question that somebody else who is also on the call has, or that somebody who might see this in the future has. So it's a great idea to ask them. And if you're a little shy and don't want to ask your questions audibly, well, then you can certainly type them into the questions box. Down below you see that little line up that says questions, and Lisa checks that periodically, and she will, when I stop to answer questions, Lisa will read some of those questions that are in that questions box out to me as well. So you don't have to go on microphone if you don't choose to. Okay. Level 5 of the Anastasi system of psychic development is all about developing the energy and skill in spirit communication. Now, I assume at this point that all of my students have already proceeded through the levels 1 through 3, which are really establishing the core capabilities, the core tools in your toolbox of everything that you will do in the psychic world. So if you don't have that level 1 through 3 under your belt, then I suggest you at some point go back and get that before proceeding further into the field. In level 4, we did an introduction to channeling, and we introduced spirit communication. So if you've been with me right through this, you're studying and you're practicing and you're working on the spirit communication skills that you learned either through my Blu-rays or in my classes in person or on my CDs or on the MP3s. Okay, so I'm trying to bring this to you in as many ways as I can. Level 5, developing the energy and the skill in spirit communication, is just that. Spirit communication doesn't come in a flash of light. It's not an immediate, wow, I've got this tremendous ability. Now, I'm not saying that we don't, all of us have those experiences, but I'm talking about the ability to turn it on, to turn it off, to control it, to know the difference between what you're getting when you're getting it, to be able to protect yourself, ground yourself, to really understand what it is that you're doing in spirit communication, to be able to do it in a professional and responsible fashion. And that's really what we're learning in level 5, developing the energy and skill in spirit communication. We do in one weekend of classes what would take a spirit medium many years to develop. Now, we cover an enormous amount of material. I'm going to be touching upon much of this material in this webinar this evening. We spend an enormous amount of time discussing it in class, but also practicing it in class. And then, of course, I'm going to expect all of my students to go out of the classroom into their daily lives and to work with it as much as possible. Because this is, it's not like a, you know, you learn to do something one time and you're going to remember it forever. This is a skill, and the skill needs to be developed through practice and through experience. And there's only so much that I can teach you and tell you. The rest you really do have to get on your own, which is the reason why there are many, many people in the world who profess to be psychic mediums, and there are relatively few who really are good psychic mediums. And of course, I want to have every student who graduates from my program having that label of good psychic medium on them. And so I work very, very hard to make sure that I give you all the tools that you need to go out and develop this to a very high level of capability on your own. Let's look at the next slide. Tantamount to perfecting your skills as a psychic medium is paying tremendous attention to self-clearing and self-protection techniques. If you were with me during level 4, you will remember me comparing opening a channel to connect with your guides to opening the same channel to connect with the other side and connect with people who passed on. And what I had told you back there in level 4 is that when you're opening that channel to connect only with your higher self, you don't really need that much protection because you are only connecting with another part of yourself. When you open that channel to connect with your guides, well, again, we increase the protection a little bit, but you're still only connecting with a higher part of yourself because those guides come through your higher self. But when you open that channel to connect with people who've passed on, you're expanding your connection kind of like a radio tower, almost infinitely, to anything, anyone that would want to connect, to be able to make a connection with you. Therefore, you must utilize the top, the most extreme, the most intense level of protection that you have available to you. And let me say that when I teach this in my level 5 class in person, the protection we use is extraordinary. If you walked into the room when we're in the middle of a class, you would almost feel like you were walking through a fibrous membrane to get into that classroom. The energy that's around the room is that thick when we're doing our protection. And likewise, anyone who has graduated from the system, when they are doing their spirit communication readings or their spirit communication messages sessions, they will also create that extremely intense, strong protection around them. Some people who have been practicing mediums will poo-poo this. Others will say that our protections aren't even strong enough. If you are utilizing a different protection than what I teach and it's working for you, well, fine, go ahead and use it. My message to you is you must learn the most intense protection that you can and employ it every time without exception that you do a mediumship or spirit communication reading. Likewise, you need to perfect and learn about self-clearing, how to keep yourself self-cleared and how to keep yourself grounded. One of the most amazing things about spirit communication is that you are making of yourself literally a radio antenna to the other side. And in order to be the best antenna, the best telephone that you can be, you need to be totally unblocked. You need to be totally clear so that that channel that you're creating operates in a way that allows information to come through without kind of clogging up the pathways. It's got to be completely clear. You have to be totally selfless in order for this to happen. What I mean that is you've got to have a strong enough ego to be able to let your ego go. It's kind of a contradiction of terms, but when you really get it, you'll understand that it is not so. We have the little ego of the selfish self, and we have the big ego of the higher self working through us. And when we are working as a spirit medium, we need to be completely clear at the time we are doing those readings, that work, so that we are not interfering ourselves with what's coming through, so that the information isn't getting clogged along the way in, so that whatever is coming through to us is crisp and clear and in its real state, not in a state colored with our own expectations. That's a real important aspect of this work. I have seen psychic mediums who go back and forth between working with their empathy between themselves and the client and working with their channel between themselves and the spirit. And you can almost see the channel open, and they get their information, and then they close it, and then they open to the client to see how the client's receiving it, and then they reach back up into spirit, and you can almost see it going back and forth, where the energy is cut off, opened, cut off, opened. Well, if you work that way, first of all, it takes an enormous amount of energy to do that. So by the time you're done with one reading, you're already dead tired. That's number one. Number two, if you're doing that, that constant reopening that empathic door between you and your client, or your sitter as it's sometimes called, that constant reopening of that door is going to start to color the feeling that, or the information, not the feeling, but it could be feelings, because that's another form of information that you're getting from the spirit that's trying to communicate with you. So being, self-clearing techniques are extremely important, both during the reading, that's what I was trying to give you a little feeling for that, and also after you're done with your reading, because we have some interesting things that can happen that anyone who's doing spirit communication for a while will discover. I can remember, and I can almost see Lisa cringing on this one. It's one of my favorite stories. When she was dog sitting for me at my home, I was away traveling, and she had a messages session that she was doing for a group of people that weekend. And I came home to my house at the end of that weekend, and of course she wasn't there, she had gone home, but I walked into the house, my supposedly empty house, and walked into a crowd of people energetically. She had forgotten to clear herself after doing this. She was new at the time to the whole concept of mediumship, and she had forgotten to clear herself, ground herself, and dismiss all the spirits who had come through during the reading, and of course all the others who didn't have a chance to come through, who still wanted to. She had forgotten to let them go and clear herself. And then of course she had come back into my home with this crowd of people around her, and she didn't clear my house when she left. And so we have two different types of clearing that need to happen here, actually three. We have the need to be clear while we're doing the reading. We have the need to clear ourselves and cut ourselves off from all the spirits we've connected with and the people we've connected with during our session. And we also have the responsibility for keeping our home clear, because those spirits who want to talk to you who didn't get that message through may very well come on home and keep trying to talk to you all week long. Or as in the case of Lisa, they said, oh boy, here's a nice light on this tower called Lisa, and she's staying at Sandy's house, and we'll just hang out there until she's ready to listen to us. So I came home and I did a major house clearing and sent everybody home, and made sure that Lisa knew what had happened, and she's been real careful about that ever since. She's one of the people who is the absolute best I've ever seen these days at keeping herself clear, clearing a house, and also clearing her space after a reading or after a messages session. So I hope I've made that point really clear. Clear, don't you love that word? I'm overusing it. Really clear to you, because keeping yourself clear is so incredibly important. First off, and here are some of the reasons why, if you don't keep yourself clear, you're not going to be able to do your best spirit communication reading. Just that simple. Secondly, if you don't clear yourself after you leave the session and you end up bringing those spirits or connections to the people who were your clients home with you, you cannot have your mind clear and on your own family or life issues and make healthy decisions for yourself. So then your profession begins to interfere with your life, and neither yourself nor your family will like those results. And of course, the third thing is that if you bring this stuff into your physical home, your home is going to start to feel like it doesn't belong to you anymore. It's going to just no longer be your place of comfort or protection or safety or centeredness. So I can't begin to tell you how important this concept is. And we spend a lot of time in my classes learning and going over and over and over self-clearing techniques. We have a lot of them, not just one, because different circumstances will require different kinds of techniques. And we also spend a whole lot of time going over self-protection techniques, because depending on what it is that we're doing, self-protective techniques will vary. We do not necessarily use the same protection in every situation. It really depends what you're dealing with. You know, for just as an example, I might have, you know, be wearing a seatbelt when I get into my car. That's one form of self-protection. But if I'm having to walk down a city street in a foreign country in what I know is a really, really bad area by myself, you know, I might have a whole different set of protection there. I might bring, you know, a big old tall 6-foot guy with me with really broad shoulders. You know, I might have a whole different set of protections. So the same exact thing is true of what we're talking about in our classes. The level of protection that you use is going to mirror the situation that you're in. There's no requirement to hammer a nail with a sledgehammer. On the other hand, you want to make sure that you have the protection that is needed within the situation. Okay, you know, I would like to open us up just for a couple of minutes here, because I would like, I see one hand up, so I know there's a question, and Donald will get to you. But before I get to Donald's question, I would like some people to give me some examples of self-clearing techniques. Can I see a hand of somebody who would like to suggest some techniques that you do for self-clearing that you could share with the group here tonight? I could just call on somebody at random. Okay, I've got a bunch of hands up. Lisa, could you open up the mic on a few of these people so that they can tell us what they're doing for self-clearing? Karen, you're unmuted. Karen, what are you doing for self-clearing? What's your favorite technique? Okay, Lisa, there seems to be a problem with Karen's mic. We have another Karen, so why don't we unmute the other Karen, and maybe she can be able to speak. Karen, I don't know why your mic wasn't working. Karen Don.
Oh, is my hand up? Sorry.
Well, while I've got you, what's your favorite self-clearing technique?
I don't really have one. I'm still learning. So
okay, well then that's a good reason to be here tonight. Put your hand down.
Okay, got it.
And Karen Hawk, if you can't get your mic to work, then please put your hand down. Okay. It looks like it just went up. And Kathleen, your hand has been up here for the past 16 minutes. At least it seems that way. So we're going to unmute you, Kathleen, and let's see if you have a good self-clearing technique.
Hi, Sandy.
Hello.
I'm sorry. It shows that my hand is down at my end, so I'm not sure what the technical problem is, but it's, as far as clearing, well, after I've been in meditation with other people, I'll do something like light a white candle in my fireplace, or before I go to bed, and ask for protection, or take a shower, believe it or not, after.
I think those are all good suggestions. So thank you very much for sharing them. That's excellent. Everybody write those down. And let's call on one more person here. How about Denise?
Down here.
Yeah, Denise, you're unmuted now. What's your favorite self-clearing technique?
I'm sorry, my hand was down.
Oh, and on my line, it's open. So, okay, we just have a little, so you don't have a suggestion. You don't have anything you want to share?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, well, that's fine. Keep listening. Lisa, I'm going to let you call the next person. Maybe you'll have better luck. Your screen may be showing things a little more accurately than mine. Okay, Masami, you are unmuted.
Okay. Hi, Sandy.
Hey, Masami.
Hi. My favorite, the protection that I use before my mediumship.
No, I don't want to know about self-protection yet. We're talking about your favorite self-clearing technique.
Clearing, yes. I often go to the sea and touch the seawater to cleanse myself. I also use a bundle of sage for cleansing. I can use some crystals too. I have a different method.
All good suggestions. And since you were about to talk about self-protection, what's your favorite self-protection technique?
My favorite self-protection technique? That is, before my mediumship, I visualize a big the balloon and put myself inside of the balloon.
Just like the guy on this picture. Isn't that perfect?
And when I do a psychometry, I visualize those invisible rubber gloves so that I won't touch the energy directly. I won't be bothered by that energy for my protection. And I also do a prayer before my mediumship, like you showed me years ago, like in the name of all that is. I heal, cleanse, and protect my mind, my body, and my soul. And in the name of that is, I ask to be a instrument for the power of the universe. So I always say that. I make sure to say that every time I do mediumship.
Okay. We actually, these days, Masami, we actually take that protection a lot more beyond that. But I do, you're probably also working within a protected space, so you're protecting the room you're working in a clear area. That certainly is additional protections. These days, and it's on my website, folks, I have my students do what is called the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram.
Oh, yes, I do. I know.
Okay, I thought you did because I remember teaching you that. And they also open their spirit gates so that they make sure they're in full channel.
Yes, I do that.
Great protective techniques. Yep, I knew you did that. Masami,
yes, you taught us well.
Yep. Thank you very much for
Thank
sharing.
you. Thank you.
Okay, I want to move on now because I don't want to take up too much time. I've got a lot to cover. But I wanted to hear from a few of you, both to get a feeling for where this group is at in terms of your background and experience. And obviously it's very broad. We've got people who are real beginners, and we've also got people who've been practicing mediumship for a few years. So we've got a very broad spectrum of people here. And I will try to address what I'm speaking of to all of you. The important thing about what I'm talking about here in this slide is that before you even step into your very first spirit communication reading, no matter how long you've been doing mediumship, you always completely and totally protect yourself, which means you protect your space, you open your channel, which is in itself a form of protection, you bring in your higher self and guides, which also enhances and takes that protection a step further. You, as Masami said, say a prayer of protection, and then in addition to all of that, you call in the archangels using that lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which you will find written down on my website. It's a free handout. You can download it. It'll always be there because it's so important. It's a great protection. You can actually feel the energy in the room shifting when you create that protection because it brings the archangels in and brings their protection in to help you. So when you're actually doing your reading, your mediumship reading, you are totally protected, but you come to that reading completely clear. And when you're done with the reading, you thank your guides, you thank your higher self, you thank the archangels who come in to protect you, and then you do some kind of a self-clearing on yourself. And you can either sage yourself, which a few of you suggested on, when I asked for hands. You can use salt and water. You can use a feather to clear your aura by cleansing it. You can use a copper ring. We use these in my classes to slice the energy around you. You can also buy those rings from me. I am selling them now these days, so they're available. You also can, as Masami said, go and swim in some salt water. And I think Kathleen had said before that, you can take a shower where you're visualizing white light coming down. One of the beautiful meditations, guided visualizations that we teach is to imagine a giant razor cutting all of the ties and connections you've made and go completely around your aura. And you can even do that, Kathleen, while you're in the shower. Okay, so it's another technique for self-clearing. Also, just as a little aside, it's not a bad idea, because in your psychic work you have really turned yourself into a sensitive. And as you move through life with all of its cares and concerns and worries, you will be more inclined to pick up stresses and tensions and anxieties from other people these days than you used to, because you are more sensitive. So it's not a bad idea to get into the habit of using self-clearing techniques and self-protection techniques in your daily life as well. And you're going to be more grounded, a happier person, and the people around you are going to find you just so much more comfortable to be with, because you are clear and you are in a state of protection most of the time. Let's go on and take a look at the next slide. I love this. Trish, I don't know where you find your slides, but this is one of my favorites because it just says it. Okay? We see this poor guy trying to push this happy face up the hill. And of course, this slide is called The Importance of Attitude, the Importance of Staying Positive, and the Problem of Fear and Negativity. The reason I say this says it all is because when you are in a society, as we all are, where everybody has got too much to do and too little time to do it in, and we have the stresses of finances and family and work and job and trying to get it all done, it's very, very difficult to remain positive about all the things we have to do. And it's even more difficult to remain positive when the person sitting next to us is busy complaining about all the things that they have to do, or all the things that are going wrong in their life. What's very interesting is that we can think of everything that comes out of our mouths or every action we take as in one way or another being causative. It's kind of like the telephone game. You say something and it goes to the next person, goes to the next person, goes to the next person. Now, in the telephone game, the message is getting changed and transferred along the way. And that does happen. But the important concept here is to recognize that each one of those transfers from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, isn't just a transfer of words. It's a transfer of energy. And each one of those things that happens along the way, if we touch somebody and that person touches another, the transfer of energy via touch is a transfer of energy. So everything in our world is energy. And depending on our attitude, when we transfer that energy, it is going to have to be transferred to the next person that person we were just talking to or sitting with involves themselves with. So if I'm doing this download and I'm really super negative to you, then the next person that you get involved with is going to get that download from you. And it's going to get passed that way right along. Well, now let's take this into your mediumship. When you're working as a spirit communicator, you have the potential of getting that negativity from two sources. You can either get that negativity from the spirit you're connecting with, or you can get that negativity from the person who's sitting and getting the reading. this is another reason why that first slide that said your most important way of beginning a reading is to be totally clear. Why clear? Because you don't know what belongs to you and what doesn't unless you're clear. You don't know whether to buy into that negativity or not unless you're clear. If I am receiving this symbol of hurt and pain that's coming from the spirit I'm connecting with, if I'm not totally clear going into that reading, I'm able to think that that hurt and pain belongs to me when it doesn't. It's the spirit giving me a symbol that that's the way they feel, or perhaps that's the way they felt because of the way they passed. Okay? It's only a symbol. It doesn't belong to me. Unless I'm totally clear, I can't tell that that's not mine. Okay, so we have to be clear so that we can tell the difference between what's ours and what's not ours. Now, the other thing that's here, the importance of attitude, importance of staying positive. You see, the problem is fear and negativity. The spirit can bring in things that are hurtful. The person who's getting the reading in a spirit communication reading can be hurting. They can be crying. They can be feeling this very major heaviness of heart because of what they have gone through and losing this person that they want to connect with. Okay? So you've got this potential negativity coming from two different directions. Neither one of these people, the one in spirit or the one in the physical form, really wants to cause you any harm at all. But if your empathy is turned on and it's connecting to either one of them without your being clear, you are going to be taken over by their negativity, and your attitude is going to change, and you will no longer be positive. In order to give a good spirit communication, you must be totally clear. You must know the difference between what you're feeling from your client, what you're feeling from the spirit, and what you yourself are feeling. You have to have almost like a finger on the pulse of all three of those people, yourself, the spirit, and the client. Okay? To be a good medium, you've got to be able to do all three of those things. You cannot do that if you aren't perfectly clear. Okay? And I think you're getting an understanding here of how this works. Imagine, if you will, that you are standing in this tube, this channel of white light, and you're connecting with spirits on the other side of that protected space that you're in. Your guides are allowing only to come through the one or two spirits that have something of value, or they're positive, or they're healthy to connect with. You're not going to be able to connect with something negative or bad, because your guides and your higher self will act, and your archangels will act as a protection. But even so, a spirit that comes through may have sustained hurt when they were alive. That may actually be one of the things they're bringing through as a symbol. Maybe they died of an illness or a disease or an accident that caused pain. They may use that pain as a symbol to prove that's who they are. And it's important for you to recognize that's not you. You do not want to walk out of your spirit communication reading having a kidney disorder simply because you connected with a spirit who died of kidney disease. That's what I'm saying, folks. Okay? You cannot do that if you're not clear. So you have to be totally clear when you do the reading. You also don't want to make your empathic connection to your client, which makes you tell them what they want to hear instead of what the spirit wants to tell them. Okay? So again, you need to be able to feel the difference between what the client is pushing at you that they want to hear and what you are really getting. Again, the importance of clarity and of being positive. Your own personal attitude in all of your readings has to be uplifting, has to be positive, has to be joyous. You personally have to be in this state of happy, joyous clarity in order to do your best reading, and in order to maintain that clarity that is necessary to do a real spirit communication reading, and a reading which is positive and doesn't bring you down and doesn't bring the client down. Now, let me take this a step further. I have been in messages sessions by actually fairly good mediums that didn't understand this concept that I'm trying to give to you here. And all of a sudden, we have a client who's deciding that they're going to get over emotional and cry and really get into the negatives and the hurts. And then on the other hand, we have the spirit who is going back and forth with the client. And now we have the medium who doesn't recognize that this negative energy, which they have now started to bring through, is pulling the energy of the group down. And give some contemplation to what I'm just saying. When we get off on a negative tailspin, if we don't immediately recognize it and look for the positive or change the way that we're presenting it, if we allow this to become a free-for-all, okay, emotionally, that dark energy will bring the energy down. If you're dealing with a group of clients, you may have had a really uplifting, happy energy that was so clear that the spirits were coming through very easily and the energy was just flowing and the information was just flowing. And now all of a sudden we get this negative stuff going on, and what happens is the channel for the information to come through narrows. And when it narrows, you, as the psychic medium, feel like you're pushing this boulder up the hill. All of a sudden, the energy from the audience is sucking your energy instead of generating energy to hold it up, to bolster it, to give it some buoyancy. Okay? So you have the responsibility of keeping a positive energy in your group. Now, one of the things that we do when we're teaching Psychic Development Level 5, developing the skills and the energy, is we teach you techniques for keeping the energy high in the room, for recognizing when it's beginning to bottom out, when you have tapped into this negativity, for changing the energy, for changing how this whole thing moves through. Because you, especially if you're working with a group, must keep the energy of the group up in order to keep the information from the spirit world flowing. Okay? Once that door closes, it is very, very difficult, or narrows, very, very difficult to pull the energy back up to do the reading that you really want to be doing. Okay? Now, I would like to hear from a couple of people on this and get your points of view on what I'm talking about. Lisa, I would particularly like to hear what you have to say about this.
You better let somebody else go first. I had to leave the room for a minute. I'm not sure where you are.
Okay. Well, let me tell you where I am, because I really do want your information on this. I was talking about how when you're doing a group messages session and the energy falls in the group because of either a person in the group who became very negative or was crying or was upset, and perhaps the resultant energy from the spirit was also painful or hurtful, and all of a sudden you find yourself going down that hurtful or negative path. And so the reading is getting harder and harder to do. The information is getting harder and harder to reach because that channel's closing. What do you do to open it back up again? And I'm asking this of Lisa for a reason, because she does a lot of group sessions, so she's very familiar with this experience.
And there's a couple of things you can do. You can take time to take a break for a few minutes, and you can get the energy shifted, ramped back up. You can throw in a couple of jokes, which is something that I'm notorious for in the middle of my message sessions, because again, it shifts the focus, shifts the energy, it gets the energy back up where you need it to be. Yeah, if I'm in a certain space within the circle of when I'm doing mediumship readings, I will step to the side, I will step out of the energy. Again, it shifts the energy, it breaks it.
Excellent. I think that says it all. But let me see if there's anybody else who has a comment to make. I'd like to address that too. Lisa, you want to call on somebody else who's got a hand up?
Terry, you are unmuted.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi.
I have a question. You're speaking so much of energy. I work at I'm a chemical lab technician, and I work at a fill plant where they fill cylinders with various gases like nitrogen, helium, and that's energy. It's all based on energy. Could that have an effect on you physically?
Oh, sure. And certainly not just the energy, the very chemicals certainly could. Absolutely. You know, we talk about protection. I look at that and I say, what are you doing working in that kind of an environment to create the right protection so that you don't have that exposure to either the chemicals or the energy from the chemicals? Okay?
Yeah. I seem to be attracted to it, or I wouldn't be in that field.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the attraction to it might be that you have a scientific mind and you have the ability to recognize it and to work with it. I mean, you could be attracted to it for a lot of reasons. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't protect from it. Just like in mediumship, we can be gifted as mediums and we may have an affinity for it and an ability for it, but to do it without being balanced and keeping ourselves clear and grounding as necessary and protecting, that would be very foolish to get involved with, wouldn't it? Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So keeping that in mind. But my question was, and let's get back on track if you don't mind, my question to the group that I thought you were going to comment on was, if you're in a group session and I'm sure you've gone to mediumship sessions or you've watched them, but if you're in a group session and all of a sudden you see the medium locked into one person who's really negative or who's crying or who's saying, no, no, couldn't be that person, couldn't be that person, and all of a sudden you feel the energy in the group dropping. Well, first of all, have you been in a situation where you felt that?
Of course. If you go to a funeral.
Oh, okay, yes, sure.
Yeah, you automatically resonate with the sorrow and the loss. And
so how do you, and that was a good example, at a funeral you would feel things very much like this. So how do you lift that energy so that it doesn't bottom out and stay in that place of fear and negativity, which really is not where we're going to be able to do our spirit communication readings?
I personally, and let's use that example of going to a funeral as opposed to a birthday party. You know, there's high energy, or there's a different energy. It's sorrow, it's grief.
Okay. Let's move on, because perhaps, Terry, I think that you have a good idea. You gave a good example, but I think we need to get a better handle on this. So
okay.
Thank you very much. And Lisa, let's unmute somebody else and see if, let's use the funeral versus birthday party kind of a concept here. I like that concept. And, you know, supposing we're at a funeral and we know that this is not the place where this energy needs to be. The energy needs to come back up so that the people involved are going to have healthy lives, that they can be positive in their nature. How are we going to bring that energy back up? Because, you know, when we're working with spirit communication, when the energy gets down there in the hurt and the crying and the upset on the part of the living, or in the I am obligated, I'm sorry I'm dead, I left you too soon kind of stuff on the part of the dead, when the energy bottoms out, the channel for the information closes. It is a natural side effect, and the medium can no longer connect with that deceased person. So how are we going to be able to keep that energy up while we're at the funeral? Because that is the feeling that's here. You know, this is one of the reasons why mediumship is one of the hardest things to do, because in order to make the connection clearly, not only do you have to be clear and healthy and positive yourself, but you've got to be able to generate that energy in the environment around you, or that gateway between the worlds closes. Okay? So who's got an idea of how we can bring that energy up? Lisa gave us a couple. And I liked the idea that Terry just gave us about thinking about it as a funeral. So how do you bring that energy up without making people feel like you're not giving them the right recognition or respect. Who would like to share their idea, their concept?
Annie, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. I really maintain my focus. I think it's kind of unconscious, but I'm super focused doing it. And if I notice more the energy dropping when the client doesn't recognize somebody,
Yes.
rather than when they start crying, and maybe that's because I can kind of funnel that off. I don't take it on. Even if I feel the spirits, grief or emotions, I don't know how I do it, but I funnel it off. But what I usually do, if I can sense they're kind of closing things down a little bit, I will say, well, I'll switch to another spirit, or let's see if there's somebody else here. Try to switch the energy a little bit. That way, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but and it's interesting because when I'm at a funeral, I absorb all of it, and I don't do as well as I do during a meeting.
Probably, Sandy, because when you're at the funeral, the difference between being at the funeral usually and being the medium is that when you're at the funeral, that dead person is usually somebody you knew and you had strong feelings for, and because of that, it's so much harder to remain clear. Do you see that?
Yeah.
One of the reasons we tend to get, I think of it as a cloudy aura or a dirty aura, is because our emotions get short-circuited and make like that comic strip character Pigpen. Okay, so we really need, getting yourself clear is getting your emotions clear. Okay, it's having. I love that image of the shower that Kathleen gave us before. Have that white light shower like a rainstorm through your aura, and do it frequently, because it will help to ground out all that emotional tension that we tend to move through the world with. The clearer we are in our physical body, in our physical environment, the better we're going to be as mediums and psychics, okay, and channels. And Sandy, that was great what you just talked about, because when you mentioned, and I didn't mention it, it was a good idea, because when the client is not identifying the spirit will often just give up and say, oh, I'm wasting my time here, and just turn around and walk away, figuratively speaking. And you can't blame them. If they're not getting the recognition that they want from the living person, they run out of juice. It's like it's too much effort, so they'll give up. So one of the ways that you can actually circumvent that is to give your client, before your mediumship session even begins, kind of a list of, this is how you should handle what comes through. This is how I work, and this is how you can help me to keep the channel open, to keep that information flowing. Okay, and that way you kind of make your client a participant in getting the best reading they can get. There's a lot about this that we really don't know yet. We're dealing with a public who comes to us for spirit communication readings, who, in spite of everything they've seen on TV, which is considerable, believe it or not, they still don't know how to go about getting a reading. And so it's perfectly okay for you to explain to them what you do, how you work, and how they can help it to work in the best way. Okay, so that's another thing that you can be doing, which is great. Thank you so much. You and Lisa have been very helpful, and Terry, you too, with your great idea about the funeral, because that really was a good example. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Okay, we're taking a look at ethics here. Okay, don't be a bad psychic medium. It's your choice. You can take the good path or the bad path. What is that, the red pill or the green pill? The thing is that there really are bad psychic mediums, and I really, really, really want my students to be able to know what a bad psychic medium is, so that they make absolutely certain that they don't get to be one, even accidentally. Okay? What constitutes a bad psychic medium? Again, I'm going to open up the lines because I'd like you folks to give me your opinion. You've been to psychic mediums, you've seen psychic mediums. To you, what's a bad psychic medium? Let me see a hand. And Lisa, would you call on someone? Everybody's afraid to say anything.
Okay, Rainy's hand is up.
Okay, Rainy.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
I'm sorry, I have so many problems when I try to get on this thing. I would think, I've been to psychic mediums where they're not really reading or they're not really getting the information like you would say from high up. They're getting it more from me. They're reading my body language, they're reading my emotions, and they just expand on it. So I'm not saying that they don't have psychic ability, they do, but they're not really giving me concrete stuff that I know would be coming from somewhere else.
Okay.
I feel like they're getting it more from my body language and my emotions.
Okay, I agree with you. So that's one good thing. If you go to a medium who's doing that, it doesn't mean they're not a good psychic, but they're not really a good medium. Thanks, Rainey. I agree with you. Let's put Rainey's mic closed up and see if there's somebody else. What do you think is a bad psychic medium? What kind of medium would you not want to go to? Think about it. Even if you haven't been to one, you've seen them on TV. Let's hear it, Colette.
When they're offering their opinion, or they're altering the message, where they're letting their own ego and opinion alter the authentic message that's coming through.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I watched somebody do that in my store one day when the medium was trying to tell, actually it was one of my employees who she was reading, and she was busy telling him that he needed to go back and take care of his dead grandmother's business for her. It was like, oh, this is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So your interpretation of the spirit's information is not always the right thing to do. Okay, so I agree with you. And again, that goes back to being clear, because if you're not clear, it's very hard to keep your own personal opinions out of what information you're giving. So great, Colette. Thank you. Who else? What constitutes a bad psychic medium?
Denise, is your hand raised?
No, it's not. I'm sorry. No.
I think Annie's is, though, unless that's still up from before.
Annie, did you have another comment?
I don't know if this is a bad medium, but in my opinion it is. I don't know what her name is, but the woman on TV that walks up to people and says, your child's trying to contact you. To me, that's unethical and invasive unless somebody asks for you to do that for them. But I don't know if I'm wrong about that.
Annie, I'm in total agreement. Absolutely. And, you know, that's that medium who does that. Remember, she's working for television, so she's paid to do that. And unfortunately, it's creating a whole crop of people out there who think it's okay to just, you know, jump in and give people psychic information that's unsolicited. But you're absolutely correct. Unless somebody comes to you for a reading, or unless you have kind of felt them out to see if they're going to be open to that information, it is absolutely wrong of you to clobber them with it. I don't care how important it is you think it is to get to them. You know, it may not be their belief system. You know, you may be actually creating more harm than you do good by doing that kind of thing. So you are absolutely correct. 3 points on that one. Okay, does anybody else have any idea or what they've seen or what they feel constitutes a bad psychic medium?
Allison, you are unmuted.
Hi, Sandy and everyone. My opinion is I actually sat in a circle and watched watched a platform, and the medium, instead of just being the conduit, she insisted she was correct, and then almost badgered the people that could not connect with what she was saying. I think that's, you know, we're not 100%. So, you know, her interpretation or discernment of the information could, on some level, be incorrect. I think to, you know, insist that she's absolutely and unequivocally correct, I think that's kind of not so kosher.
Yeah, and now, can you give me a suggestion on how she could have handled that? And I agree with you. Browbeating your clients is not necessarily the best way to be a psychic medium. Could you describe a way that she could have handled that, that she could have turned that into something good?
Well, I mean, I think on one level she should have just given the information as she was getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, we try not to put our egos into it. We try to step outside of that and just, you know, be the conduit, just, you know, be the medium, you know, from there to there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she could have given the information as she was getting it and then asking if they understood the information, and then go back to Spirit and say, can you give me something that's a little more clearly evidential, or something to even define what the symbol or the information that she was getting could apply. And then if the people couldn't really take it or understand it, she could have just said, okay, well, we'll leave that in case, you know, it works later on, because, you know, I think most of us listening are working mediums, or some, you know, you kind of know that sometimes people have psychic amnesia and they don't remember things instantaneously. They think about it and of course they remember it later on. So
Mm-hmm.
I think she could have been a little bit more gentle in the delivery, and maybe you know, for other people, if it's not working, it's not working, and everybody needs to know that that's okay. You know, sometimes you might get information even, I think, ahead of time for someone else. So if it's not really working, I'd say, you know, just be at peace and let it go, and if it's meant to come up again, it will.
I agree with you. Also, another interesting bit of information here, when I'm teaching my classes, what I tell my students is to don't be afraid to send their clients home with homework. One of the hardest things about being a psychic medium is that if you're a real one, not like the one that Rini was talking about, that's really an empath who's reading the client instead of the spirit. If you're a real psychic medium and you're really connecting with the person in spirit, well, that person in spirit obviously is going to know a whole lot of things that the living person sitting in front of you doesn't. In fact, one of the ways that you really can prove that spirit communication is real is when you come up with information that your client didn't know. And so rather than browbeating them and beating on them, even if you are correct, it just makes so much sense to say, look, let's make this some homework. Go home and check on this, check the family records, and get back to me and let me know what you find. Okay, just that simple. Because nothing can prove mediumship's reality better than finding out that something that came from the spirit really happened and the client just never knew about it. Isn't that nice? So, and yes, it's one of the reasons it's so hard to be a spirit medium, because so many of the things that come through we just can't get proof from. And yet our purpose in doing this is to prove the existence of the other side by coming up with validation. So, you know, we validate what we can, but what we can't validate, we don't say, no, it's wrong. We say, let's go look into it and see. Maybe it's correct. Okay? And so thanks. That was a really good one. Okay, folks. Looking back at this slide, there's one other kind of bad psychic medium that I want to talk about, and that's the psychic medium who's a psychic vampire. And you know, first off, people who are psychic vampires, i.e. people who take other people's energy because their energy is too low, people who are chronically low energy people who have become psychic vampires for whatever reason in their life, that something in their life or their world that drains their energy, so they go and they try to drain other people's energy. Many of them do find their way into becoming psychic mediums, because it is a very easy thing to get hold of somebody when they're open and they're vulnerable and they're in a state of high emotion, and prod those emotions. Remember, emotion is really the battery. Emotion is energy. So if I can get you emotional enough and I can read you empathically like Rainey was talking about, and I can get you into a super heavy emotional state, I can just sit there and drain all of your energy. And if I'm really good at it, Heck, I can make you think that the only way you can connect with your loved one is by coming back to me, and now I've got a routine energy supply and you're it. Okay? That is a bad psychic medium, folks. Okay? And I don't ever, ever, ever want to hear of any of my students anywhere who are doing that one. Okay? So here's a rule of thumb. If you're doing mediumship, or if you're going to a medium, and every client who walks in the door ends up, you know, like every day, ends up with their box of tissues, okay? They're doing nothing except crying or feeling bad. You know that that medium is draining their clients. That's a dead giveaway, okay? And if it happens to be you who are doing that, I mean, if it happens with one client one day, well, that's fine. If it happens even with 3 or 4 clients one day, well, that's not out of the question. But if it happens with all of your clients every day, get out of the field. You've become a vampire, okay? Don't you love Sandy's down-to-earth matter-of-factness? We do have to police ourselves, don't we? Okay, now, let's look at the other side of it. What makes a good psychic medium, okay? And again, Lisa, can I start with you? When do you feel that you've done your very best readings? What is a good psychic medium?
I get the most pleasure out of when a client walks away from me with more knowledge than they had when they came in about the process, about their family, about themselves. Yeah, for me it's teaching. So I can enlighten my clients about how they can connect. I always try to teach them how they can connect themselves. They don't need a medium to do that. So when they walk away smiling and they feel better about when they come in.
And then you knew you did a good job.
Then I know I did a good job.
Excellent. Thank you. Who else would like to share what makes you feel really good about the mediumship reading you just did? Or if you're not a medium already, what makes you feel really good when you've gotten a great mediumship reading? What makes it so good? Let's hear from you. Who else would like to talk? Anybody got their hand up? I see a few.
I'm seeing the same hands up, so I don't know if they just haven't taken them down, but let's start with Terry. And Terry, you're unmuted.
I don't know if Terry can hear you. Let's move on to Rain.
Hello?
Oh, Terry, there you are.
Yeah.
When have you gotten a really good psychic mediumship reading? How has it made you feel what was so good about it?
I got one both from you and from Lisa also. I used to live in Port Charlotte, and I took your classes, and I cherish, truly cherish, because they were so real. Lisa, well, it was kind of a roundabout thing, and I didn't even realize what was going on at the time, and I had to talk to a friend that I worked with, and Lisa said, well, were you on a cruise or something? And my mom was coming through strong. I said, no, I didn't go on a cruise, but I did go on a pontoon boat ride in my son's boat, so that was the correlation that he picked up on. And it wasn't until I talked to a friend that she kept asking me if I'd been on a cruise. And I said, no, I didn't go on a cruise, but I did.
Okay.
In a roundabout way on the river.
Yeah, it was like what Rainey said then, when you got confirmation about something that you yourself didn't know about until later.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't, because she kept saying cruise. But what the bottom line was, we went on a boat ride, I guess. And my mom was there, and my mom came through. And when you gave a reading for me, Sandy, my dad came through, and it was very special. And I hold it dear to my heart today. Both
thank you. I love that.
I think you guys are great.
Hey,
you guys know what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and let's take one more. How about Sandy? I'm going to pick on you again, okay, because I know that you are professionally reading these days. So Sandy Peters, I know your hand's not up. I'm calling on you.
This will be the first time you've talked to Sandy. You haven't talked to her yet.
Ah, okay.
Hello.
Hello,
You're
Sandy.
muted.
I am here.
So when you've done a really good mediumship reading, from your
Yes.
perspective, what made it so good? What was it that made it special?
I tell you, when I've brought peace to someone, when, I was that clear channel, I was connecting to the spirit directly and allowing the symbolism and the message to come through. And again, being clear, you're not clouding that with your own empathy and whatever, but it's that true symbolism that is something special just for that person that you're reading for. And that truly most often does give them great peace and hope that, that the soul is eternal and love is forever.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And folks, if those of you who aren't aware of who Sandy is, I'm grateful to have her on with us tonight. Sandy is the host of Soul Chat Radio, and I actually get to be on her show once in a while.
And I love that, and everybody loves that.
So,
yes.
What's your website? What's your web address?
It's www.sandy.com. It's SANDIEE.com, and I have a lot of new exciting things coming up. So, and thank you for being an inspiration. I think you're a wonderful teacher, mentor, and inspiration for everybody who is discovering their psychic abilities. So.
Well, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
I appreciate that, especially coming from you. Thank you.
Oh, you're
okay,
welcome.
So one more thing I want to say about this slide before we move on. And Sandy made me remember this again. So I don't want to move on without mentioning it. What makes a good psychic medium? Number one, you are being the best that you can be for that client and that person in spirit in that moment. Okay? It's not about you. It's not about impressing the client. It's not about pushing things further than you're capable or proving anything to anyone. It's merely about doing the best job in that moment that you can do. And when you're in that space, you are going to do a good reading. You're going to do what the client needs to have done. You're going to do what the spirit needs to have done. You're going to make that connection that they need. You can't go into any reading ahead of time knowing what you're going to do, because you see, it's not you who are really making that reading happen. All you are is a bridge. Remember, you're the telephone tower. Okay? You're making the connection so that the spirit can say what they have to say, so that they can give the client the identification that's necessary, so that the client can hear it the way they need to hear it for it to make a difference in their lives. And when you are just being the best that you can be in that moment, not to prove anything to anyone, just to do a good job, you're going to be a good psychic medium. It's just that simple. And isn't it like that with just about anything in life? And let's move on to our next slide. This talks about the problem of empathy. I mentioned one of the worst kinds of mediums are the kind that sometimes even unknowingly become psychic vampires. Well, I've talked to you before in other webinars about empathy being that quality which makes us totally, or at least very receptive to other people's emotions and i.e. their energy. So good empaths that's a very strong psychic ability that we all human beings have. And almost all psychics and channels and mediums are extremely good empaths. Now, that skill, which is a phenomenal tool for getting information if we allow ourselves to see that information as a symbol, to see our feeling or our emotion as a symbol. That tool is a phenomenal tool if it's used that way. But if we take on that emotion, either from the spirit or from the living person, now it becomes something which will cause us to become unclear, to lose our clarity, so we're not getting as good a reading. And the next thing that'll happen is we will be having a tendency to pull the energy from the client and also to read the client empathically instead of making our mediumship connection to the spirit. Okay? So empathy, when it's used as a tool for recognizing the emotion or the physical feeling, is a phenomenal tool. But when it's utilized in a way where we're buying into it, it becomes something which is a tremendous deficit to us. So one of the things that my students learn over and over and over again in all my classes is to cut their empathy off from their client, except for just being able to tell what the client is reacting to in case it's what you're saying is bothering them, and to be able to understand that empathy feeling from the spirit is only a symbol. It's not something which is your own. And again, that whole principle of clarity, keeping yourself clear, comes back here again. So remember, empathy can be a benefit or a deficit. It's all a matter of how you use it. And let's look at the next slide. This is the art of interpreting symbols. One of the things I spend a lot of time on in level 5 is the art of interpreting symbols, because you see something interesting happens in mediumship that doesn't happen in other types of psychic readings. In a normal psychic reading where I'm only working with telepathy and empathy between my client and I, or clairvoyance, i.e. my visual abilities, I'm going to only be getting the symbols from my client or my client's guides or from my own guides. So I'm dealing with two sets of symbols, just mine and the client's. But in mediumship, something else happens. Because I'm connecting with the spirit, the person in spirit, I'm also now getting a whole block of symbols that come from the spirit, from a third person who's not there, who I can't talk to directly, who I can only receive these symbols from and then have to interpret. So I've got three sets of symbols. So something that's real important about people who want to be good mediums is that your ability to expand the systems of symbols that you're familiar with becomes very important. So people, for example, who've got a real touch on psychology will do well as mediums. People who know how to interpret dreams well will do well as mediums. People who spent a lot of time working with symbol systems like astrology, or believe it or not, mathematics, or anything which requires something like interior decorating, because when you're trying to manipulate all those forms and shapes in an environment so that they fit just so, believe it or not, you're working with the same kind of concepts that we need to work with as mediums interpreting symbols. Okay, so as a medium, it's important, number one, to know where your symbol's coming from. If that symbol is empathically or telepathically being projected at you from your client, you're going to ignore it, because you, just like in empathy, you don't want, in mediumship, you don't want the information coming from your client. You're connecting with the spirit so that you can get the information coming from the spirit to your client. Okay, so you're basically cutting off your receptivity to your client. You don't want to receive from them except just to know if they're comfortable with the reading you're giving them. All of your information is going to be coming from the person in spirit and your own guides helping to make that information from the spirit world more understandable to you. So what are some of the symbols that you could be receiving? It's very typical for people in spirit to give you, for example, how you felt. Okay, it's common for them to let you know how they died by maybe giving you a pain in their stomach or their heart, or maybe making you feel like your throat's sore or that you're having trouble breathing, i.e. these physical symptoms that you would pick up aren't you, and they don't mean that the spirit is still in pain. They are a symbol. The feeling is a symbol to let you know how the person passed. Okay? They may show you a visual letter or name, so they can use your clairvoyance to show you a symbol as a letter or something you're holding or something you're doing. So whatever they're showing you that you can look at, the visual is a symbol. I'll never forget one of the best symbols. There was my partner John Mayers doing a mediumship session, and he's trying to figure out whether the information he's giving is for the person on his left or the person on his right, and he can't make up his mind which one. And all of a sudden he sees a giant image in his mind of a pickaxe, and he's like, wow, did one of your dead people have a pickaxe? And he's going on and on and on. What could the axe have been used for? And then all of a sudden he hits himself in the head and he says, oh, duh, this isn't about the axe. This is about pick. Just pick one and go with it, okay? So sometimes symbols are the word for the symbol. So you've got to learn to work with symbols and to expand the symbol systems that you work with already in order to be able to connect with and understand more and more people. A lot of mediums that have been on television and have become very popular have popularized certain symbols, i.e. a red rose, means one thing. A pink rose means another thing. A bouquet of yellow roses means another thing. If you've picked up symbols like that have now become kind of universal symbols, that's great. Your guides will use them to help the people in the spirit world to get that information across to you and to your client, okay? But there are going to be so many other personal symbols that only come from the spirit. And you might ask, why does a spirit want to communicate in symbols when sometimes they're so hard to interpret? Because a picture, i.e. a symbol, is worth 1,000 words. And if the symbol isn't just pictorial, if it's a feeling is worth 1,000 pictures. So your spirit in the spirit world is trying to get information through to you in the most succinct way that it possibly can. It wants to communicate as much information as it can in as short a time as possible. And so it will utilize one symbol, if it can find it, that will have 1,000 meanings. That's why we get symbols so commonly from the spirits in the spirit world. Okay, let's look at the next slide. One of the other things that I cover in my Psychic Development Level 5 is how to get a spirit communication reading. And at the same time, let's look at the slide that's following it, how to give a spirit communication reading, okay? We need to know how to get one and how to give one. Let's go back and look at how to get a spirit communication reading. It's a good idea for anyone who is going to become a practicing medium, or even if you're going to do this for friends or family, it's a good idea for you to have a written sheet that explains how you work, that explains what your client can expect from your reading, and gives them hints as to what works best for you. Are you most comfortable if they sit without anything crossed? Well, write that down in your little list of information you're going to give them to prepare. Would you prefer that they come with an object from the dead person in their pocket that they want to connect with? Well, tell them that in your literature. Whatever it is that you want your client to do to help them to get the best reading from you that they can get, you need to tell them in advance, okay? If you're just beginning, there's a likelihood you're going to be attracting clients who are also just beginning, who know very, very little about how to get a reading. And so it's important for you to really lay the groundwork with them so that they know in advance what to expect. They know what you are capable of doing, and they also know what your limitations are and what you will not do. For example, one of the things I always teach my students, and you heard this when I talked to you before when we did Level 4, the mini webinar on that, I always tell my students that it is so important that they make it clear to the client ahead of time that I will connect with anyone who's there. I cannot bring in just anybody unless they choose to come in, okay? So if you're only coming to me because you only want to speak with your dead brother, then I'm not the right medium to come to. Because if your dead brother is not here, I'm not going to go out and drag him in, because that's unethical. Okay? Ethical mediums don't force dead people to come and talk to you. Okay? I think that's kind of a funny illustration, but it's extremely important. So that certainly is one of the things that is going to go into your literature. Okay? Don't make claims to do what you can't do or what you don't think is ethical to do. Okay? And of course, we spend a lot of time on that, this whole area in the class itself, because this is such an important factor. Okay? Again, back to the one on how to give a spirit communication reading. We spend a lot of time on this slide as well. Oops, wrong direction. Still the wrong direction. There we go. Okay. We spend a lot of time on how to give a spirit communication reading, because it's not enough to just have the skill. You need to be able to turn it on and off. You need to be aware if the track you're going to or through is causing harm to the person who's getting the reading. And that you would feel through empathy. You need to know how to move the room around the way Lisa was suggesting before if the energy in the room goes stale or falls. You need to know when a person is becoming a psychoholic, when they're becoming addicted to your reading, and you say, no, we can't do this anymore. This is not healthy for you. You need to be able to connect and disconnect at will. You need to be able to protect yourself and your client. You need to be able to cut the ties between yourself and spirit, both for yourself and also for your client. So how to give a spirit communication is very, very complex. And when we do level 5, we spend an enormous amount of time in practical readings, working with the students between each other in the class, over and over again, opening the channel, going into the channel, protecting ourselves, protecting our space, and doing all of these things I've mentioned to you, so that when you leave the class, you're actually already feeling confident to go out and do some readings and do a good job on them. Now, the next slide. I'd like to complete my session with you this evening by just doing a short little meditation with all of you that is asking for guidance, okay? And working with our guides in a control room, opening up our psychic senses, okay? Before I do this, because I'm not sure all of you are going to want to, I'm going to ask Trish to go to the slide after this so I can just talk about my upcoming workshops for a moment, and then we're going to come back to this. And we'll finish tonight with this. Upcoming workshops, I have my Psychic Development Level 5, Developing Energy and Skill in Spirit Communication, June 1st and 2nd, and that's at the Sheraton West Shore in Tampa. It's a great hotel. It's a great space for teaching. Psychic Development Level 6 is also at the same hotel. That's Healing in Spirit Communication, June 29th and 30th. I will also be doing a mini webinar like this one on Psychic Development Level 6 in mid-June. So please keep checking my Facebook and my website so that you know when this is going to be offered, and of course your email. Psychic Development classes are going to begin a new round in July. And so if you haven't taken these classes with me and you want to go all the way through from the start, they will begin again in July. Level 1 will be, it's the fundamentals, it will be on July 27th and 28th. And you can see the dates here for levels 2 and 3, and 4, 5, and 6 will follow in the fall. And I also have my last page here, additional psychic development resources. You'll see these and more on my site. All of my books, levels 1 through 5. I'm still working on level 6. And lots of workshops that you can fill in the blanks with. And now let's go back 2 slides and we'll do that meditation. And I want to give you one just before we close. Is there anyone here whose questions I have not answer because I want to get this taken care of before we do this little meditation, because at the close of the meditation we will be finished. Does anyone have a question that is burning them that they need to ask? And Lisa, I'll leave it up to you to pick the hand.
Sandy, I'm not seeing any new hands out.
Okay, it looks like I've covered your questions then. No new hands. Yeah, see, I'm seeing the same hands through the entire seminar, so I don't want to keep calling on the same people who just can't figure out how to put the hands down. Okay, folks, this is going to be a short meditation, and it's asking for guidance and moving to your control room on the inner planes and asking your guides for the ability to turn those psychic senses on and off. So if you would undo, if you've got anything tight around your middle, undo it so you have nice loose clothes on. Keep your feet flat on the floor, bare feet, not shoes. Palms in your lap. Tongue should be on the soft palate of your mouth. Close your eyes. Lean back in your chair. Don't lie down. You might fall asleep. I never lie down during meditations. Take a deep breath in through your nose and gently breathe out through your mouth, grounding and centering. Do that again 2 more times on your own to fully ground and center. In your mind's eye, take out a worry box, any box will do, and put into it all your cares and your concerns, anything that's on your mind that will interfere with our exercise this evening. You can even put your own body into it. And when you're done, slide that box around behind you where you cannot see it. I'm going to count us down, a 1 to 10 progressive relaxation. Normally for beginners I would go through this a lot more slowly and deeply, but by level 5 we should be advanced enough to move through it quickly. So I will give you a number and the body part to relax. 1, relax your head and your face. 2, breathe in, as if you're breathing a soft cloud of relaxation into your mind and brain, teaching it what relaxation feels like. 3, with your mind, send a wave of relaxation down through your entire body, from the top of your head all the way to your feet. 4, put the attention of your mind on your feet, and with your mind, tell your feet to relax and to let go and to sleep. 5, focus your attention on your legs, and with your mind, tell your legs to let go, to relax, and to sleep. 6, focus your mind on your lower torso, on all the muscles and all of the internal organs of your lower torso. With your mind, tell them all to relax to let go, and to sleep. Seven, focus your mind on the muscles and internal organs of your upper torso. With your mind, tell all of these to relax, to let go, and to sleep. Eight, focus the attention of your mind on your back, your entire back from your neck to the bottom of your spine. With your mind, tell all of the muscles of your back to relax, to let go, and to sleep. Nine, focus the attention of your mind on your arms, hands, fingers. With your mind, tell all of these to relax, to let go, and to sleep. 10, your mind is awake and alert and clear, while your body is totally relaxed, almost as if it's asleep in bed. The 10 state, 10. Now in your mind's eye, imagine yourself moving to a doorway on the inner planes. The door can look however you choose it to look. You're standing in front of it. You feel a pressure in your heart. Put your hand on your chest and find a key there. Visualize a key. Take the key out of your heart, and you will find that it opens this door on the inner planes. The door opens into your magical workplace on the inner planes. There's a stairway. Take the stairs into your workplace. Inside, you find another stairway spiraling upwards. You immediately walk to it and begin to walk upwards, spiraling around and around and around. You pass the first floor, which is the level of your lower psychic senses, and you come to the second floor, which is the level of your higher self and your guides. And you continue spiraling up until you come to the third floor. The third floor, where you may connect with people who have passed, with the help of your higher self and your guides. You step off onto the third floor, and you move to the center of the floor. You see a control room all around you, and you realize that this control room has been an inward part of yourself for all of your life. You see knobs and buttons, some that connect you to your clairvoyance, to your clairaudience, to your clairsentience, some that connect you to the ability to hear your higher self and your guides, some that allow you to hear the voices of spirits, even see spirits on the other side. This control room is inside of yourself. Once you have learned to turn these controls on and to turn them off, and to adjust their frequency, their strength, their softness, their loudness. You will have control over all of those psychic faculties that will help you to be the best psychic, the best channel, and the best spirit medium that you can be. Know that these 3 levels are here, and that once you have learned to ground yourself, to clear yourself, to protect yourself, that this is where you will come to be able to get yourself clear and make the connections that you need to make in the future to be the best medium that you can be. Now turn and see the spiraling stairway behind you, and begin to walk down the stairs again. You will remember where this control room is. Passing the 2nd level where your higher self and guides are. Passing the 1st level where your psychic senses are. And then down to the ground floor. Your control room lies within you, ready to be activated. All it needs is your attention and your time and your desire to develop these skills and abilities that lie within you. Now, take the stairway out of your workplace. Close the door behind you and lock it with the key from your heart. Place the key back into your heart for safekeeping. And I'm going to count you from 10 to 1 back to this time and this place and this current world that you live in. 10. Take a deep breath and release it. 9. 8. Give a stretch. 7. 6. Another deep breath and release it slowly. 5. 4. 3. 2 and 1. Wake up. Open your eyes. Breathe normally. And know that you are ready to begin your journey into the world of spirit communication, developing the energy and skills. Please join me at my class in Tampa or on one of my CDs or MP3s or my more recently developed Blu-rays. I'm looking forward to seeing you as a regular student. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight.